Welcome in to Palmetto Sports Daily, the Talkin Tuesday edition, and we're here to talk about what the college football coaches talked about, specifically Dabo Swinney, but we also have a bunch of college basketball starting up as well. I am the point guard for this episode, which I really appreciate, Carmine and Teagan, here with Fox Carolina in Greenville, also joined by Kevin Bilodeau in Charleston, Teagan Brown in Myrtle Beach, and Rick Henry in the capital of Columbia. And Clemson football, guys, is struggling. The worst 8-game start under Dabo Swinney in the history of his coaching stint, almost 20 years. The Tigers are 3-5 after that heartbreaking last-minute 1-point loss to Duke with a very controversial call on a 4th and 10 pass interference that the Tigers suffered on likely first-round pick Avion Terrell. We'll get into that. But first, Dabo is still trying to stay positive amid just a very difficult season. The Tigers still need to win 3 out of their last 4 games to try and become bowl eligible and keep that 20-year streak alive. And one of those wins will have to be against the Gamecocks coming up. But first, it's Florida State. And here's head coach Dabo Swinney talking about the similarities of this season to his only ever losing season as head coach of the Clemson Tigers when the team went 6-7 in 2010, and how they bounced back to have a lot of success after that, hoping that history repeats itself after this year.
If I evaluate myself, I've probably gotten a little bit away from my instincts and not trusting some of my instincts, and that's one of my things I've got to get back to. This is not a period, it's a comma. It's a part of our story. 2010 is a part of our story. It was awful. We lost 5 to the Gamecocks. That's a part of our story. That was awful. But it's a part of our journey. It's a part of our story. But you know what's also a part of our story? National championships. Nobody wants to talk about it. And again, if I don't talk about it, ain't nobody else going to talk about it. Everybody else is going to say Swinney's crazy and they suck and it's a bad year and focus on all bad. But, I mean, somebody got to talk about it because we're not a part of the machine at Clemson. We ain't a part of the machine. We've always been an outlier. We've always been a disruptor. If people don't believe after what they've seen, then that's fine. That's a decision everybody can make. But I know what I believe, and I know what we'll do. So I got no doubt. I mean, it's just part of the story. Just like 2010, as I said last night, everything bad in my life, something great came from it.
And like I said, hoping that history repeats itself. But I will say, at least on Palmetto Sports Daily, we mentioned the success historically of the Tigers program under Dabo Swinney quite a bit. 8 of the last 10 ACC titles, 2 national titles, a run of 6 trips to the college football playoff in a row when it was only 4 teams. So Dabo still with that positive mentality that something good can come out of this. But Rick, right now this season, it's pretty impressive that he can stay positive.
Yeah, well, as the head coach, he has to stay positive. He has to put on a positive face with his players, his coaching staff, and the fan base. So, yeah, Dabo has a lot in his past that he can be proud of and was very positive. But this season, just like South Carolina's, has just evolved into an unthinkable season for both. The Gamecocks, they're 3-6. They need 3 more wins. They got to win their 3 final regular season games to qualify for a bowl. They've lost 4 straight to nationally ranked SEC teams. They have another one coming up after this bye week. Texas A&M is currently ranked 3rd. But Coach Beamer, well, we're going to hear from him in a little bit. But right now, Kevin, your thoughts on the seasons that both Clemson and South Carolina are having?
You know, it's interesting with Dabo Swinney. The last several years, whenever he's talking about what's coming up for the Tigers, it's always been look ahead. We don't look back. And this year, I feel like we've talked more about the national championships this team has won in the past, the 8 out of 10 ACC championships they've won in the last decade. It feels like until now he was always like, keep looking straight ahead. Don't look back. Don't look back. And now all he does is look back because of how awful things are this year. And it's just interesting to see him kind of not flip-flop, but just kind of change his whole philosophy on how this team needs to look going forward, Teagan, as things have just gotten worse and worse this year.
I mean, you look at the beginning of the season, and Dabo was talking all about how this team reminds him of the 2016 championship team, and then all of a sudden, a couple of games later, he's like, you know what? actually they remind me of the 2010 team when, obviously his worst prior season before this. So looking at the past, I don't know if maybe that's sort of what got Dabo into that mindset that he doesn't want to be in. He mentioned in that clip there that he just can't get over that hump. So, I don't know. I think that they've got to look to the future, but they've also got to take it one game at a time with these last few games. I don't know if we'll see them get a bowl game, Carmine.
Yeah, Teagan, they certainly do. And another thing that I thought was interesting was Dabo saying that he hasn't stuck to his convictions as much. He in this same press conference, he was talking about he's letting maybe too many voices get in and not follow his own instincts, which for a multiple-time national title coach is interesting to hear about. Also interesting to hear about, guys, was Dabo saying that the referee's call was one of the worst he's ever seen in his entire career in his post-game press conference following the Tigers being up by 7 points with less than a minute left. Duke was driving on a 4th and 10, and a play that looked like it could easily be offensive pass interference on Duke ended up being defensive pass interference on Avion Terrell and Clemson, which converted a 4th and 10. It would have been the end of the game. Instead, it's a 1st and goal, and then Duke on the next play scores. They decide to go for 2, take the lead, 46-45, and just a heartbreaking ending to a heartbreaking season that continues for Clemson. And today, Dabo, after being fined $10,000, which is not that much to him, but still $10,000 by the ACC for his post-game comments about it being a terrible call in his opinion, which I agree with. I think it was also a terrible call. But he's talking about now the very end of his press conference. Now, this is 50 minutes in to the Dabo Swinney press conference that we are on Fox Carolina, and you can check out more bites on our website. But Dabo going in the referee accountability direction at the very end on the heels of a $10,000 fine.
That's why I was so frustrated with the refs, a little salty, because there's a lot at stake, and there's not consequences. In this profession, coaches get crucified, fined, players get crucified, held to this unrealistic accountability standard, but refs have zero accountability. Well, they do, but it's behind a curtain. They get to go home and drink a beer and get on with their life and just leave the carnage left behind that affects a lot of people losing jobs. Well, refs are people too. It ain't just coaches and players, and if they're a part of the game, then by God, they ought to be a part of the game. And they ought to be a part of the accountability, and they ought to be a part of the consequences, not just behind some shadowy curtain. No, they ought to have to answer for it. But, we just get this will be addressed with the crew and yada, yada, yada. Okay? Yeah, but you ain't there's no public accountability. Ain't none of that. So that's the system. The system needs to change. It needs to be changed. There needs to be challenge opportunity, and we need full-time officials. If you're going to have this type of stakes, it needs to be full-time officials. And everybody should have consequences.
Some very interesting points there brought up by Coach Dabo Swinney. Also detailing the process as well, not in that soundbite, but saying that coaches are allowed to submit 10 complaints about the refs or calls they think they missed per game. He said he submitted 10 for one of the games. He wouldn't mention, he didn't want to get fined too much. But he did say he submitted 10 of those. 5 of them came back as, yes, we missed that call in one game this season. Be interesting to see referee press conferences, Kevin, maybe afterwards. But I do like what he's talking about. Any challenges, like if they could challenge that pass interference at the end, that would be an interesting wrinkle. But also not a lot of public accountability for these refs, and unique comments from Dabo there.
Yeah, but we saw this in the NFL a couple years ago where they tried being able to throw flags for pass interference, and that just kind of bogged the whole game down. Pretty much every pass interference play there was, people were throwing flags and wanting to review those plays, and it just really brought the whole game to a kind of a screeching halt. So I understand what Dabo's saying, and that was a completely blown call in that game on Saturday, but I don't want to start reviewing those plays week after week. I do like that he said, and I think this is a big thing in most sports, these referees need to be full-time employees of the conference or the NCAA or somebody, because these guys make, I believe it's between $1,000 and $3,000 per game, and they're just driving in on a Saturday, and they've got this multi-billion-dollar entity kind of in their hands, and depending on if they make a call, it can cost someone a lot, like Dabo said there, Rick.
Yeah, I've always thought that they should be full-time employees. You have guys who are working as lawyers, teachers, and then they come in, they call these games. And also, we need more transparency. Like, hey, let's ask the officials some questions like, why did you call it that way? But some good points by Dabo, but man, he's going to get himself fined again, but he can't afford it. Okay, back to the Gamecocks here. Again, they need 3 more wins to become bowl eligible. They've lost 4 in a row. Have another tough game coming up after a bye week. It'll be the first game since he fired offensive coordinator Mike Shula. So who's going to call the plays? How much difference will we see in the offense? But right now, Shane Beamer, following Saturday's loss at Ole Miss, he said, hey, the goal is still making a bowl.
Yeah, bowl games matter, and we're trying to get to a bowl game, and the only way you can do that is finding a way to win a football game, and we're not thinking about what's beyond College Station. It's this week getting better and then figuring out a way to go out there and compete. These guys will respond. I don't have to dangle anything. I don't have to go in there and give some, Newt Rockne win for the Gipper speech to try and get these guys motivated to play. Like they'll compete. That's what they do. We got to get better so we can. We're sick and tired of this feeling. I'm tired of coming into the team meeting on Sunday, and I told them that before the game. I'm tired of coming into the team meeting on Sunday talking about how close we are, talking about we didn't finish, and they're tired of hearing me say it. They're tired of feeling that way, and we're going to go right back to work and try and fix the things that we can to get better.
All right, a loss at Texas A&M, and the hopes of making a bowl are all gone. Carmine?
Yeah, it's just too bad. I mean, who would have thought going in that the Gamecocks need to win all their games and Clemson needs to win 3 out of the last 4 just to make a bowl game after the rankings coming in. But, hey, positivity on the other side of this break because hoop season is upon us. Some big wins for our South Carolina teams right after this.
Welcome back to Palmetto Sports Daily. We are talking college basketball. It's the opening night of the season being held on Monday. Lots of South Carolina teams in action in that first day, including here in the Low Country, where the College of Charleston opening up a new season, picking up a win at home as they beat up on Tusculum. Final score in that one, 79-58. Not really the smoothest afternoon for the College as they go out to shoot just 1 of 23 from three-point land. I believe at one point they missed 22 in a row over the course of the end of the first half and the second half. A lot of injuries already for the College of Charleston. 5 of their top players not playing in this game, including prize recruit Colby Duggan, who didn't play in this game. He actually went out for warm-ups, rolled his ankle, and wasn't able to play once things got started. But the Cougars having enough to pick up a win at home in their opener. Also, the Citadel picking up a win in their first game of the season. They were at home taking on Erskine, and the Bulldogs really taking care of business. They won 105-61. Sola Adebisi scoring 15 points for the Bulldogs as they break a 22-game losing streak that carried over from last year by winning their first game of the season. Teagan?
Well, Coastal Carolina women's struggling at the beginning of the season with almost an entirely new roster. The Chants losing 63-53 against Miami, Ohio. And this is the first season opener they've lost since 2004. So breaking a very long streak there of wins to start the season. Kristen Williams, really the only returner from last year. She led the Sun Belt in three-pointers last season. She only had about 40% last night. Of course, Chauncey in attendance. But, this is just the beginning for the team. Like I said, lots of new players. They're still figuring out their chemistry. Head coach Kevin Pedersen there said really his only concern for this team prior to the season was just a lack of experience from their transfers who, didn't get that much playing time at their school, even if it was a bigger program. So a tough loss for them there. They'll hit the road to take on BYU next. We'll have to see how they do with that one. We're going to take a quick break here on Palmetto Sports Daily, but we will be right back with more. Welcome back to Palmetto Sports Daily. It's crossover season basketball tipping off last night, of course, for Coastal Carolina. The men on the road taking on Western Michigan, and they stayed pretty much neck and neck the entire game. They had a lead for a good amount of time in that first half. They went into the locker room with the lead, but in those last 5 minutes just kind of lost it and lost 76-71. Lots of new players on this team this year. The leaders last night, Joshua Beadle, Boston College transfer, 21 points. And then Rashid Jones returning to Coastal as well with 21 points, who was kind of the ball handler all of last year. Kind of it was all on his shoulders. So at least he's got some guys around him this year that can score. And, for a first game, I think this showed a lot of potential for them. I think it's a very different looking team than last year, Carmine.
Yeah, and Josh Beadle, just a couple seasons ago, Teagan, as you know, was a Clemson Tiger. So interesting journey for him all around the eastern seaboard, I guess, now back to the South Carolina State. But as far as Clemson, they looked great in their opener, holding New Hampshire to 25% from the field and holding them to below 40 points while winning by about 40 with pretty much every single player on the team who is new, who was not on last year's team, other than Dylan Hunter. And Ace Buckner stepped up big. That was a great storyline. Had 18 points in his debut as a Tiger. He was a redshirt last season, sitting on the bench, absorbing everything. But the son of Little John legend Greg Buckner, two-time All-ACC with the Tigers. He had that epic dunk to beat North Carolina in the ACC tournament right at the buzzer, and he scored 1,750 points, did Greg Buckner. So now his son, Ace Buckner, is coming on strong. Great to see him in his debut. And also for Brad Brownell and the team, they had 11 guys who played 10 minutes or more trying to figure out this lineup with so many new players and a new old face who went from Clemson to Georgia, now back to Clemson, the cat guy, R.J. Godfrey.
I'm so glad to be back in Little John and to play in front of these fans. The student section, the grit pit was awesome tonight.
This is one of those games where things are going very well and you have momentum and, everything's easy. We're obviously the bigger, stronger team, and we did what the bigger, stronger team should do.
Yeah, you got to beat the teams you're supposed to beat. And Rick, speaking of a full circle journey back to from when someone Wentz came, we had a former Gamecocks assistant women's basketball coach making a trip back to Columbia, but now as a bit of an enemy on the other side.
Yeah, I wouldn't say enemy there, Carmine, because Don Staley
Right.
says once a Gamecock, always a Gamecock, and we've got some video. Winston Gandy, now the head coach at Grand Canyon in his first year there, and he brought his team to the East Coast to face his former team. There's Coach Gandy hugging Don Staley and all of the assistant coaches, and he is warmly greeted by the fans. Now look at this. The Gamecocks celebrated their accomplishments from last season. SEC, regular season, tournament championships, and the Final Four appearance, and they gave Coach Gandy a couple of rings. Now, Tanaya Latson, she transferred in from Florida State. You see her there, a high school teammate of that young lady, Raven Johnson. They grew up in the Atlanta area. Latson led the Gamecocks last night with 20 points, and last year at Florida State, she led the nation in scoring. Tessa Johnson, they're starting those three guards. They combined for 50 points. Tessa had 19, Raven 11. Here's Don Staley on that high-scoring trio.
They're our most experienced guards, so you tend to expect those type of things. I mean, I'm impressed with the efficient part of it. They're very, very efficient, and more likely they're getting some layups. Like, you can't just be a jump shooter. They're attacking the basket. They're getting layups. They're in a pretty good rhythm, and they practice that way.
We find each other. We always looking for each other. The chemistry is there. It's been there since high school. So just seeing her knock down shots, I'm really proud of her. I just want to see her win this season. And, you know, we're going to do this together. So I'm proud of her.
All right, Tanaya Latson sharing a warm-hearted moment there with her former high school teammate and now current USC teammate. Raven Johnson, this team looks like they'll be able to put a lot of points up on the scoreboard. Carmine?
Yeah, and a team that hopes to put more, I guess, runs on the scoreboard, the Atlanta Braves. We'll talk about their new head coach right after this.
Welcome back to Palmetto Sports Daily. We wrap up today with some baseball as the Atlanta Braves have their new manager. The team announcing yesterday afternoon that Walt Weiss will take over as the 49th manager in organization history. Kind of a little strange that it took for this long for them to find the guy that they were going to pick, and it was just the guy that was sitting next to Brian Snitker for the last 6 years anyway. So, Rick, your thoughts on basically the promotion of Walt Weiss to manager in Atlanta?
Yeah, kind of concerned that it took them so long, but again, he's familiar with the organization. But again, what are they going to do with that roster? When you look at the Dodgers going back-to-back with World Series wins, and you see former Brave Freddie Freeman playing a big role with the Dodgers, I want to see what they're going to do as far as the pitching staff and the overall roster. But good for Walt Weiss, getting him the top job.
Yeah, I like how the Braves always keep it internal. You know, Walt, a former player with the Braves, and helping them to the pennant while batting almost 300. And then, you know, clearly the top assistant during the Braves' recent World Series. So, Teagan, I like the internal move there. But you're right, they were clearly evaluating some other candidates along the way, Teagan.
Yeah, definitely taking some time it was interesting. So, I don't know, we'll have to see how they do with him. But we're going to wrap it up here on Palmetto Sports Daily, and we will see you again tomorrow. Thanks for joining us.